Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Cadillac with Cadillac Law, and I welcome you back to our series on real estate investing. You may remember Dan Fradenburgh. He is the CTO of Lauren Capital, and he has done 2 videos with us regarding real estate investing. Dan is an expert at multifamily investing, and so he is teaching us more about that. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Before we get started, and as always, I want to remind everyone that nothing said here is legal advice, and nothing said here creates an attorney-client relationship between myself, my firm, or you, the viewer. So, that being said, let's dive right in. Dan, we've talked about what is multifamily. We've talked about where to start with the bank. Now, we need to talk about why people decide on different sizes of assets, and then also the classes of assets, what the asset classes are. Why don't we start with asset class? Will you tell us what that is?
Awesome. That's exactly what I prefer anyway.
Okay, great.
I got a little bit of a pet peeve about class because they use the exact same word for 2 different things. The first meaning of the term class has to do with the condition of the building. So is it old and beat up? Is it, up to date, but not very fancy? Or does it have all the bells and whistles and amenities? That's one version of class. Is it a brand new building? That sort of thing. But the second meaning of class, it has to do with the neighborhood that the property is in. So that has to do with what are the school districts like? What is the crime rate like in that neighborhood? And both of the 2 are ranked the same way, just like in grade school, where it'll be like A+, A-, B+, and so on like that.
Okay.
So those are the different classes. So as far as why people make the decision.
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you then have a Class C asset in a Class A neighborhood?
Absolutely. And that is the most desirable type of building, is a place that's beat up, but it's in an awesome area. So
Okay.
because anybody who wants to do a value add, in other words, their business depends on doing renovations in order to bring up the profitability of the property, that's what they're up to. They're trying to go with where's a place with market rents that are fantastic, and the building right now can't meet them because they don't have the inflow of capital to fix up the units.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that distinction. And then I'm assuming the inverse exists. So you don't want to get a Class A in a C neighborhood.
So an A-class property in a D neighborhood would be like going into, so the nasty part of town would be like the D class, and it's kind of like buying out the apartment complex and gold plating all the toilets. You're never going to be profitable on that. There's no limit to what you can spend on a property, but there is a limit to how much you can spend where it actually still makes sense. So there's no point in having an A-class property in a D area, but you can end up, having just about every other variation out there.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you for that. So now that we understand class, which I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know until just now. So I gotta thank you for that. Now that we understand the 2 types of class, the neighborhood and the building, let's talk about size. So obviously, everyone here is familiar with very large apartment complexes, right? Especially if you're in the Dallas area or a major metroplex, you've seen these huge apartment complexes, right? Maybe not everyone is familiar with the fact that there are 5 and 6 unit apartment complexes out there. There's 8 unit, there's 10 unit. So there are different sizes. What would be the motivation for the buyer of each different size?
Well, the biggest thing that's a bit of a problem with real estate in general, and I'd say about success, is it's about mindset. It's like, what do you think you can actually handle? So a lot of people, they stick at the 5 and 10 and 15 units, mostly just because the idea of being a part of a 10 million, 20 million, $100 million complex, it just scares the crap out of them. So that's part of the reason why they do it. But the other thing has to do with your network. Like, who are you friends with? Are you friends with people who are good at taking down these smaller properties, or are you in with a group where they have a few different 150 unit apartment complexes and things like that? But the one piece of advice I'd like to give, it comes from the name, just the title alone, of the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Now, he didn't talk about commercial real estate, but the idea of the 4-Hour Work Week is that if you can run a business really well, it can only take you 4 hours a week, which sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it
if you
does.
yeah, and of course, I was the digital guy who enabled people's 4-hour work week. So, I'm a lot more cynical about it than most people. But the thing I wanted to really emphasize, though, when it comes to the 4-hour work week is, let's just say that that's possible. Well, every apartment complex is a business in itself.
Mhm.
So if you've only got 40 hours per week, that means you top out at 10 properties
Mm.
if you can pull off 4 hours a week. So the thing that went through my mind is, well, if I can only do it with 10 properties, then I better pick 10 really, really great properties, or, have some other play. So that is what attracts me to bigger deals. My mentor had a saying where he said, there's more juice in a piece of watermelon than in the entire grape. And I think that that's a great way to show, like when you're talking teamwork, it's just shaving off a little piece for yourself. It's better to be involved in something that's a lot bigger, but you need to have the chops where the team will accept you.
So, in terms of choosing asset size, I would imagine then the team would have part to do with that. If you're a newbie team, there's only 3 of you, you probably don't want to buy 400 units, right?
Well, sure, but the bigger thing is you're probably not going to get it accepted for the loan,
Right.
and of course your sponsor KP. In order to be eligible for a commercial loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset. So that's
Oh.
the big piece of the puzzle that in coaching products they almost never mention it. And personally, I think it's because that forces people into partnering with the sponsor that instead of
Mhm.
seeking out additional sponsors and being able to compare and let them compete. But you can see just from that description that that's a minefield that it wouldn't even occur to you basically until it's too late.
Yeah. So, to close out on this session, for people who are interested in investing in real estate and in particular multifamily, to start out, do you suggest they go find a sponsor, or do you suggest they go find a 5 unit?
Yeah, honestly, like the biggest problem, it goes back to illiquidity. And then also, the most important part of the expertise, I'd say, would be knowing to be sufficiently insured and get insurance from a company that'll actually pay up if you do something wrong. Because, you get some insurance companies that are pretty sketchy as a whole,
Mhm.
and that's one of the bigger problems. So personally, I think whatever you want to end up doing, I think you should find a way to make that happen. And as far as economies of scale, though, I'll always prefer the bigger properties, just because if you lose one tenant, oh well. But if you are buying houses with the intention to rent them out, then one person not paying up is a disaster, and it can sink your entire portfolio.
Yeah, I agree. Sound advice. Well, thank you, Dan, for joining us. This has been really great. And just for our viewers, know that Dan will be coming back for this series on investing in real estate. And he will tell us more about multifamily. And make sure you hit like or subscribe. Thanks, everyone.